Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her brow as she finished stitching up the wounded Kilari transport beast. The six-legged creature, easily the size of a small building, had been caught in a mining accident on the outer rim of the Andromeda station. Most species would have simply put it down. But Sarah had spent 3 days carefully repairing its damaged leg servos and neural pathways. "Impossible," muttered Zethka, the Kalari station administrator, his insectoid features clicking with disapproval. "No one repairs a damaged Grimthak. They are too dangerous when injured." Sarah packed her veterinary equipment into her worn leather bag, the same one she'd carried since her days treating farm animals back on Earth. "Everything deserves a chance to heal," she said simply, watching as the massive creature tested its repaired leg. The Grimthak's 6 eyes focused on her with what she could swear was gratitude before it lumbered away. The other species on the station had long since stopped questioning Dr. Chen's methods, though they never stopped being amazed by them. In the 5 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Federation, human veterinarians had become legendary for their willingness to treat any creature, no matter how dangerous or supposedly untreatable. Where other species saw monsters, humans saw patients. This reputation was exactly why Commander Zephyr of the Altarian Defense Corps had specifically requested Sarah for what he called an impossible situation. The holographic briefing flickered to life in Sarah's small clinic aboard the medical frigate Compassion. Commander Zephyr's blue-scaled features were grim as he began speaking. "Dr. Chen, what I'm about to show you is classified at the highest levels. 3 weeks ago, our deep space exploration vessel discovered something in the abandoned Vorthak system. Something that should not exist." The image changed to show a massive creature contained within what appeared to be an enormous force field prison. Sarah leaned forward, her heart racing as she took in the sight. The being was unlike anything she had ever seen. Easily 40 feet long, with a crystalline carapace that seemed to shift between deep purple and black. Multiple appendages writhed around what might have been a head, and bioluminescent patterns pulsed across its surface in hypnotic waves. "This is a shadow maw," Zephyr continued, his voice heavy with dread. "The most feared predator in known galactic history. They were supposedly extinct for over 10,000 years. Wiped out by a coalition of 17 different species working together. A single adult shadow maw can destroy an entire planetary ecosystem in months." Sarah studied the creature carefully. Even through the hologram, she could see that something was wrong. The bioluminescent patterns were erratic, and several of the appendages moved in ways that suggested neurological damage. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because this one is dying," Zephyr said. "And before you ask why we don't just let it die, the answer is complicated. Our xenobiologists have discovered that this shadow maw contains genetic sequences that could provide immunity to the Crimson Plague that's been devastating the outer colonies. Its death would mean the loss of potentially millions of lives." The Crimson Plague had been the nightmare of the Outer Rim for 2 years now. A bacterial infection that seemed to target the respiratory systems of most known species, it had a mortality rate of over 90%. Even the most advanced medical facilities could only slow its progression, not cure it. "Every veterinarian and xenobiologist in the Federation has examined the data," Zephyr continued. "They all say the same thing. The creature is too far gone, too dangerous to approach, and even if we could treat it, a shadow maw can never be trusted. They kill for pleasure, Dr. Chen. It's their nature." Sarah watched the creature writhe weakly in its containment field. She had heard the stories about shadow maws from the history databases. Entire worlds left barren. Civilizations wiped out overnight. Fleets of starships torn apart by creatures that seemed to exist only to destroy. But looking at this one now, she didn't see a monster. She saw a patient in pain. "When do we leave?" she asked. Commander Zephyr's expression was one of relief mixed with concern. "Dr. Chen, I must stress that every expert we've consulted believes this is impossible. The creature's biology is completely alien to anything we understand. Its nervous system operates on quantum frequencies we can barely detect, let alone treat. And that's assuming it doesn't kill you the moment you approach." "Has anyone actually tried to communicate with it?" Sarah asked. The question seemed to surprise Zephyr. "Communicate? Dr. Chen, shadow maws are not intelligent in any way we recognize. They are pure predator, driven only by the urge to hunt and kill." Sarah began packing her equipment, selecting the most advanced diagnostic tools humanity had developed. "That's what they used to say about Earth's great white sharks. Turned out we just didn't understand them well enough." The journey to the containment facility took 18 hours through hyperspace. During the trip, Sarah studied every piece of data the Federation had on shadow maws. Most of it read like horror stories. Ancient records of worlds going dark, distress signals cut short, entire star systems evacuated in panic. But between the legends and the fear, Sarah found fragments of more scientific observations. Shadow maws were found in family groups. They showed complex hunting behaviors that suggested planning and communication. Some ancient texts even described them as having intricate social structures. Maybe, she thought, they're not the mindless killers everyone believes them to be. The research station orbiting the dead world of Vorthak Prime was a marvel of engineering, a massive structure designed specifically to contain the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. As Sarah's shuttle approached, she could see the energy readings from the containment fields even through the viewports. Dr. Kelvith, the station's chief xenobiologist, met her at the docking bay. The tall, gray-skinned Valorian looked exhausted, his usually pristine lab coat stained with what Sarah hoped was just chemical residue. "Dr. Chen, I must protest this course of action one final time," Kelvith said as they walked through the station's corridors. "In my professional opinion, what you are attempting is not just impossible. It's suicidal." "What exactly is wrong with it?" Sarah asked, studying the readings on her portable scanner as they approached the containment level. "Where do I begin? Its neurological pathways are deteriorating at a rate of 3% per day. Its digestive system has completely shut down. The quantum resonance that allows its consciousness to function is becoming increasingly unstable. And that's just the beginning." They entered the observation deck overlooking the containment chamber. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she saw the shadow maw in person for the first time. Even dying, it was magnificent. The creature moved with a grace that spoke of intelligence. And those bioluminescent patterns weren't random. They followed complex mathematical sequences that reminded Sarah of the neural firing patterns she'd studied in Earth's dolphins. "Has anyone tried to decode those light patterns?" she asked. Kelvith looked at her as if she'd suggested juggling plasma grenades. "Dr. Chen, those patterns are merely the electrical discharges of a failing nervous system. They mean nothing." Sarah wasn't so sure. She had spent years learning to read the subtle signs of pain and distress in creatures that couldn't speak. This shadow maw wasn't just dying randomly. It was trying to communicate something. "I need to get closer," she said. "Absolutely not," Kelvith replied firmly. "The containment field is the only thing keeping that creature from destroying this entire station. Even weakened as it is, a shadow maw's psychic abilities can drive sentient beings insane with terror." Sarah had dealt with psychic creatures before. Earth's veterinarians had developed techniques for working with the empathic cetacean species without being overwhelmed by their emotional projections. "I have mental shielding training, and if that thing wanted to kill us, wouldn't it have tried to break out by now?" For the first time, Kelvith hesitated. "Well, actually, it has shown remarkably little aggression since we brought it here. Our initial projections suggested it would be constantly attempting to escape, but instead it seems to spend most of its time in what we've determined is a meditative state." Show me the detailed scans, Sarah said. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of data analysis. Sarah compared the Shadow Maw's current readings with the historical data they had on healthy specimens. What she found made her heart race with excitement and terror in equal measure. "Dr. Kelvith," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I don't think this creature is dying of natural causes." The Valorian scientist looked up from his own analysis. "What do you mean?" "Look at these neural pathway degradations. They're not random. They're following a specific pattern. And this quantum resonance instability, it's not getting worse randomly either. Someone or something has been systematically damaging this creature's nervous system." Kelvith pulled up the scans on the main display. As the two scientists studied the data together, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The Shadow Maw hadn't been found dying, it had been tortured. "These look like the results of experimental procedures," Sarah continued, pointing to specific areas of damage. "Neural probes, forced stimulation of pain receptors, surgical removal of tissue samples while the creature was conscious." "That's impossible," Kelvith said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Who would dare capture and experiment on a Shadow Maw?" Sarah was already thinking through the implications. If someone had been experimenting on this creature, then its aggressive reputation might have been the result of trauma, not natural instinct. A tortured animal would certainly lash out at any perceived threat. "I need to examine it directly," she said. "Dr. Chen, even if your theory is correct, approaching that creature would be suicide. Traumatized predators are the most dangerous of all." Sarah was already putting on her biosuit, a specially designed piece of equipment that could protect her from most known toxins and energy discharges. "Dr. Kelvith, I've spent my career treating traumatized animals. They don't want to hurt you. They're just scared and in pain." "This isn't a traumatized house cat, Dr. Chen. This is a creature that could tear apart a battle cruiser." Sarah paused at the airlock leading to the containment chamber. Maybe that's exactly why it needs help the most. The containment chamber was vast, easily 100 meters across, designed to hold creatures much larger than the Shadow Maw. As Sarah stepped through the outer barrier of the containment field, she felt the familiar tingle of energy across her skin. The Shadow Maw noticed her immediately. Its crystalline head turned toward her, and those bioluminescent patterns began pulsing faster. Sarah had expected to feel the psychic terror that every report mentioned, but instead she felt something entirely different. Curiosity mixed with desperate hope. "Hey there, beautiful," she whispered, slowly approaching with her scanner held out non-threateningly. "I know you're scared. I know you're in pain, but I'm here to help." The creature's appendages, which had been writhing weakly, began to move in coordinated patterns. The bioluminescent displays across its carapace shifted to softer blues and greens. Sarah realized she was seeing something no one else had bothered to look for. The Shadow Maw was trying to communicate peacefully. Her scanner began picking up complex data streams. The creature's quantum signature wasn't chaotic at all. It was trying to establish a connection, attempting to share information about its condition. Sarah slowly knelt down, placing her hand flat on the chamber floor. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Images flooded her mind, not the expected visions of violence and destruction, but memories of a creature trying desperately to survive. She saw flashes of the laboratories where it had been held, felt echoes of the agony it had endured, and sensed its growing despair as its body slowly failed. But underneath all the pain and trauma, Sarah felt something else: intelligence far greater than human, compassion for creatures smaller than itself, and a desperate desire to return to others of its kind who were in danger. "Dr. Chen!" Kelvith's voice crackled through her comm system. "Your readings are spiking dangerously. You need to withdraw immediately." Sarah ignored him, maintaining her connection with the Shadow Maw. Through the psychic link, she began to understand the creature's true condition. The neural damage wasn't just from torture, it was the result of forced addiction to a synthetic compound that enhanced the creature's natural abilities while slowly poisoning its system. "You poor thing," she whispered. "They were using you as a living weapon, weren't they?" The Shadow Maw's response came as a wave of gratitude so powerful it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. For the first time in what must have been years, someone understood what had been done to it. Sarah stood slowly, her mind racing with treatment possibilities. The synthetic compound was still in the creature's system, continuing to cause damage every moment. But if she could identify it and develop a way to neutralize it... "Dr. Chen," Kelvith's voice was urgent now. "You've been in there for over an hour. We're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the creature." Sarah looked up at the observation deck, where she could see Kelvith and several other scientists watching in amazement. "It's not dangerous," she called out. "It's trying to help me understand how to treat it." The next few hours would be crucial. Sarah had established communication with the most feared predator in galactic history and discovered that everything the galaxy believed about Shadow Maws was wrong. But knowing what was wrong and being able to fix it were two very different things. As she prepared to leave the containment chamber, the Shadow Maw pulsed one final message through their connection, a complex image that showed other creatures like itself, trapped and suffering in facilities across the galaxy. "There are others," she whispered, "and if I can save you, maybe I can save them too." Sarah worked through the night, analyzing the blood and tissue samples the Shadow Maw had willingly provided. The creature's cooperation had stunned the research team. Never in recorded history had a Shadow Maw allowed itself to be examined without violence. "The synthetic compound is unlike anything in our databases," Sarah explained to the assembled team of xenobiologists and medical officers. "It's designed to amplify the creature's natural psychic abilities while simultaneously creating a dependency similar to what we see in addiction cases." Dr. Kelvith studied the molecular breakdown on the main display. "These chemical signatures suggest Vorthak origin, but the Vorthak civilization fell over 8,000 years ago." "Maybe they didn't all die," Sarah said grimly. "Maybe some of them survived and have been continuing their experiments." Commander Zephyr joined the discussion via hologram from his ship. "Dr. Chen, our intelligence suggests that several research facilities in the outer spiral have been conducting illegal experiments on extinct species. If the Vorthak are involved, then this Shadow Maw isn't just a patient," Sarah finished. "It's evidence of war crimes on a galactic scale." The weight of the situation was staggering. If Sarah was right, then Shadow Maws weren't the monsters of legend. They were victims of a systematic campaign of torture and experimentation that had driven them to violence. The creatures that had supposedly destroyed worlds might have been addicted weapons, forced to attack against their own nature. "The immediate problem," Sarah continued, "is that withdrawal from this compound will likely kill our patient. Its nervous system has become completely dependent on the synthetic enhancers." "So we maintain its current condition," suggested Dr. Yelan, a Terran medical officer. "No," Sarah said firmly. "Maintaining the current level means continued neural degradation. We have maybe 72 hours before the damage becomes irreversible." She had spent years dealing with addiction in Earth's wildlife, animals that had become dependent on human-made chemicals and needed careful detoxification, but this was exponentially more complex. The Shadow Maw's physiology operated on quantum levels that human medicine was just beginning to understand. "I need to go back in," Sarah announced. "Absolutely not," Kelvith protested. "The creature's quantum signature has been increasingly unstable. Another psychic connection could overload your nervous system." Sarah was already putting on her biosuit. It's the only way to monitor its condition during treatment. I need to know how it's responding to each step. What followed were the most intense 72 hours of Sarah's career. She established a treatment protocol that required her to maintain almost constant psychic contact with the Shadow Maw, monitoring its pain levels and adjusting the detoxification process accordingly. The first 12 hours were the worst. As Sarah began neutralizing the synthetic compound, the creature went through withdrawal symptoms that would have killed most other species. Its bioluminescent patterns flickered chaotically, its appendages thrashed in agony, and the psychic screams of pain that echoed through their connection left Sarah dizzy and nauseous. "Dr. Chen," Kelvith's voice was urgent over the comm. "The creature's vital signs are becoming erratic. Perhaps we should stop the treatment." "No," Sarah gasped, wiping blood from her nose where the psychic feedback had caused a minor hemorrhage. "It's fighting the addiction. It wants to be free of this." Through their connection, she could feel the Shadow Maw's determination. Despite the agony it was experiencing, the creature was cooperating with every aspect of the treatment. It even began using its own psychic abilities to help Sarah understand which parts of the detoxification were working and which needed adjustment. By hour 18, Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic medical history. The Shadow Maw wasn't just passively receiving treatment, it was actively participating in its own healing. The creature's intelligence was vast, its understanding of its own physiology far beyond what any Federation scientist had imagined. "It's teaching me," Sarah whispered to herself, watching as the Shadow Maw used controlled bioluminescent pulses to show her the exact molecular structures of the toxins in its system. The breakthrough came during the second day. Sarah had been struggling with a particularly complex protein chain that was resisting neutralization when the Shadow Maw suddenly projected a detailed three-dimensional image directly into her mind. The creature showed her how to modify her approach, revealing molecular binding sites that her scanners hadn't been able to detect. "Incredible," Dr. Kelvith breathed as he watched Sarah implement the creature's suggestions. "It's performing quantum-level biochemical analysis in real time." "More than that," Sarah replied, adjusting her treatment based on the Shadow Maw's guidance. "It's redesigning the detoxification process to be more efficient than anything we could have developed." The collaboration between human compassion and Shadow Maw intelligence was producing results that neither species could have achieved alone. Sarah's willingness to trust the creature, combined with the Shadow Maw's vast intellect, was creating medical breakthroughs with every hour that passed. But the process was taking its toll on both of them. Sarah had been maintaining psychic contact for over 36 hours, and the strain was showing. Her hands shook as she prepared each new treatment, and she had to fight to stay focused as waves of the creature's pain washed through her consciousness. "Dr. Chen," Commander Zephyr's voice crackled through the comm system. "Our medical officers are strongly recommending that you take a break. Your neural activity is approaching dangerous levels." "Can't stop now," Sarah mumbled, her vision blurring as she worked. "We're at the critical phase. The neural pathways are starting to regenerate, but they need constant monitoring." Through their psychic link, she felt the Shadow Maw's concern for her well-being. The creature was projecting images of rest, trying to convince her to take care of herself. But Sarah knew that if she broke the connection now, hours of progress could be lost. "I'm okay," she assured the creature, though they both knew she was lying. The Shadow Maw made a decision that surprised everyone. It began actively shielding Sarah from the worst of its pain, filtering the psychic feedback to protect her from the full intensity of its suffering. The gesture was one of pure selflessness. The creature was enduring additional agony to keep Sarah safe. "Did you see that?" Kelvith whispered to his colleagues. "It's protecting her." By the third day, the change in the Shadow Maw was remarkable. Its movements had become more coordinated, the bioluminescent patterns more stable and purposeful. The random neural firing had been replaced by complex, beautiful light displays that reminded Sarah of aurora patterns. Neural pathway regeneration is at 87%, Sarah reported, though her voice was weak from exhaustion. Quantum resonance is stabilizing within normal parameters. But the most dramatic change was in the creature's psychic presence. Where before there had been desperation and pain, Sarah now sensed a vast, gentle intelligence emerging from its chemical prison. The Shadow Maw was revealing its true nature, not a mindless predator, but a being of incredible wisdom and compassion. As the detoxification process neared completion, the Shadow Maw began sharing memories that changed everything Sarah thought she knew about its species. Through their psychic connection, she saw glimpses of Shadow Maw civilization, vast crystal cities beneath alien oceans, art and music that existed in dimensions humans couldn't perceive, scientific achievements that dwarfed anything the current galactic civilization had accomplished. "They were the gardeners," Sarah whispered in amazement. "They didn't destroy ecosystems. They cultivated them." The memories showed Shadow Maws carefully tending to the development of life on thousands of worlds, nurturing primitive species toward sentience, protecting young civilizations from cosmic disasters. The creatures that were feared throughout the galaxy had once been its greatest guardians. But something went wrong, Sarah realized as darker memories began to surface. The Vorthak discovered them. The final memories were painful to witness. Sarah saw the Vorthak's first contact with the Shadow Maws. What had begun as peaceful interaction had quickly turned to exploitation. The Vorthak had discovered that Shadow Maw neural tissue could enhance their own psychic abilities, and they had begun harvesting it. When the Shadow Maws refused to cooperate, the Vorthak had developed the synthetic compounds to control them. The same chemicals that were now poisoning Sarah's patient had been used to turn an entire species of peaceful gardeners into weapons of war. "The worlds they supposedly destroyed," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face as she experienced the memories. "They were trying to save them, but the chemical control made them attack instead." As the treatment entered its final phase, Sarah realized that healing this one Shadow Maw was only the beginning. According to the creature's memories, there were others still trapped in Vorthak facilities, still being used as living weapons. The galaxy's greatest protectors had been transformed into its most feared monsters. "We have to help the others," Sarah said, her determination renewed despite her exhaustion. The Shadow Maw pulsed agreement, projecting images of locations throughout the galaxy where others of its kind were imprisoned. But it also conveyed a warning. The Vorthak would not simply allow their weapons to be freed. They would fight to maintain control of the Shadow Maws. "Dr. Chen," Commander Zephyr's voice was urgent, "we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching the station. Unidentified vessels, moving at attack speed." Sarah looked up at the Shadow Maw, whose bioluminescent patterns had suddenly shifted to urgent reds and purples. Through their connection, she felt the creature's recognition and fear. "They're here," she whispered. "The Vorthak know what we've discovered." The research station's alarms began blaring as the approaching fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Sarah could see the fear in the eyes of the research team as they watched ships that shouldn't exist, Vorthak vessels that had been thought extinct for millennia. "The containment field," Kelvith said urgently. "If they break through the station's defenses, we need to be ready to reinitialize it around the Shadow Maw." "No," Sarah said firmly. "The treatment isn't complete. If we re-establish containment now, all of our progress will be lost." The Shadow Maw understood the situation perfectly. Through their psychic link, it communicated a simple message. It was ready to fight, not as a weapon of the Vorthak, but as a protector defending those who had shown it kindness. "Dr. Chen," the creature's voice echoed in her mind for the first time, clear and intelligent. Thank you for seeing what I truly am. Now let me show you what a free shadow maw can do. The bioluminescent patterns across its carapace blazed with brilliant light as the creature prepared to defend the station. Sarah realized she was about to witness the true power of a shadow maw, not as a mindless weapon, but as a guardian protecting those it cared about. The final confrontation was about to begin, and everything would depend on whether a traumatized creature and an exhausted human veterinarian could work together to face an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years. The Vorthak attack began with a psychic assault that brought half the research station's crew to their knees. Sarah felt the wave of mental anguish wash over her, but the Shadow Maw's protective presence shielded her from the worst of it. "Defensive positions!" Commander Zephyr's voice crackled over the communication system as his fleet engaged the attackers. "All non-essential personnel evacuate to the core!" Sarah refused to leave the containment chamber. The Shadow Maw's treatment was 96% complete. Abandoning it now would mean losing everything they had accomplished. "Dr. Chen, you must leave." Dr. Kelvith's voice was desperate over the intercom. "The Vorthak ships are targeting the research levels." "I'm staying," Sarah replied, placing her hand against the chamber wall. Through their psychic connection, she could feel the Shadow Maw's determination matching her own. The creature's bioluminescent patterns had transformed into something Sarah had never seen before. Instead of the random flickers of pain or the gentle pulses of communication, brilliant geometric designs raced across its crystalline carapace. Ancient symbols that spoke of power and protection blazed with light that seemed to bend reality around it. "What are you doing?" Sarah whispered. The Shadow Maw's response came not in images or emotions, but in words that resonated through her mind with crystalline clarity. "I am remembering who I was meant to be." The transformation that followed was beyond anything Sarah could have imagined. The creature's size didn't change, but its presence expanded beyond the physical. Sarah watched in awe as the Shadow Maw began manipulating space itself, extending its consciousness through the quantum fields that connected all matter. The first Vorthak breach pods struck the station's hull, and armed soldiers began cutting their way through the outer sections. These weren't the extinct civilization everyone believed the Vorthak to be. They were a hidden remnant that had survived by enslaving others to do their fighting for them. "Surrender the specimen," came the telepathic demand that echoed through the station. "Return our property, and your deaths will be swift." Sarah felt rage building in the Shadow Maw's consciousness. Not the mindless fury of addiction withdrawal, but the righteous anger of a being that had watched its species tortured and enslaved. "I am not your property," the creature's mental voice thundered with such power that every psychic sensitive being on the station felt it. "I am Zenthara, guardian of the seventh spiral, and you will answer for what you have done to my people." The name hit Sarah like a revelation. Through their connection, she suddenly understood that this wasn't just any Shadow Maw. It was one of their most powerful guardians, a being whose responsibility had been protecting entire sectors of the galaxy. The Vorthak soldiers reached the research levels, their energy weapons cutting through the station's defenses. Sarah could hear the sounds of battle getting closer, but she remained focused on completing the treatment. The final phase required her to maintain psychic contact while the creature's neural pathways finished their regeneration. "Almost there," she whispered, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. "Just hold on a little longer." Zenthara's response was a wave of gratitude so profound it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. "You gave me back myself, Dr. Chen. Now let me give you something in return." The Shadow Maw's transformation accelerated. The random appendages that had writhed weakly before began to move with purpose, revealing themselves to be sensory organs of incredible sophistication. Its crystalline carapace reshaped itself, becoming more symmetrical and displaying fractal patterns that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. But the most dramatic change was in its psychic presence. Where before Sarah had felt a damaged, desperate consciousness, she now sensed something vast and ancient, a mind that had witnessed the birth of stars and guided the evolution of countless species. The containment chamber door exploded inward as Vorthak soldiers breached the research level. 3 armored figures entered, their weapons trained on Sarah. "Step away from our weapon, human," the lead soldier commanded through his suit's translator. "You do not understand the forces you are meddling with." Sarah turned to face them, her hand still pressed against the chamber wall, maintaining contact with Zenthara. "I understand perfectly. You tortured an innocent species and turned them into weapons." "Innocent?" The Vorthak soldier's laugh was harsh and mechanical. "Shadow Maws are the perfect predators. We simply enhanced their natural abilities." "You're wrong," Sarah said firmly. "They were gardeners, protectors. You poisoned their minds and made them forget." "Enough!" The soldier raised his weapon. "Move away or—" He never finished the sentence. Zenthara's voice echoed through the chamber with power that made the station's hull ring like a bell. "You will harm no one under my protection." The containment field flickered and died, not from system failure, but because Zenthara had chosen to disable it. The Shadow Maw rose to its full height, and Sarah gasped as she truly saw what the creature had become. Zenthara was magnificent. Its crystalline form blazed with bioluminescent patterns that existed in spectrums beyond human vision, creating aurora-like displays in the air around it. Multiple sensory appendages moved in precise, graceful patterns, manipulating energy fields with casual ease. The Vorthak soldiers opened fire, their weapons unleashing streams of plasma that should have been devastating. Instead, Zenthara simply gestured, and the energy beams curved harmlessly around it before dissipating into sparks of light. "Impossible," one of the soldiers whispered. "No Shadow Maw has ever displayed defensive abilities of this magnitude." "Because you never allowed us to be ourselves," Zenthara replied, its mental voice carrying the weight of millennia of suffering. "You kept us drugged, tortured, broken. But this one human saw past your lies." Sarah watched in amazement as Zenthara extended its consciousness throughout the station. The creature wasn't just defending their immediate area. It was protecting every person on board, creating psychic shields that blocked the Vorthak mental attacks and energy barriers that stopped their weapons. "Dr. Chen?" Commander Zephyr's voice came through the comm system, filled with wonder. "We're reading impossible energy signatures from your location. What's happening down there?" "The Shadow Maw is protecting us," Sarah replied, her voice filled with awe. "All of us." Through their psychic connection, she could feel Zenthara reaching out beyond the station, touching the minds of the Vorthak attackers. But instead of destroying them, the Shadow Maw was doing something far more profound. It was showing them the truth. Sarah watched the Vorthak soldiers in the chamber drop their weapons as Zenthara shared memories of what the Shadow Maws had truly been. Images of worlds brought to life, species nurtured to sentience, cosmic disasters prevented by beings who saw protecting others as their highest calling. "We were wrong," one of the soldiers whispered, his artificial voice modulator unable to hide the emotion. 10,000 years of lies. We were told you were monsters." "Your leaders knew the truth," Zenthara replied sadly. "They chose to break us because they feared what we represented, beings more powerful than them who would not use that power for conquest." Sarah realized she was witnessing something that would change galactic history. Zenthara wasn't just healing from its own trauma. It was revealing the truth to everyone who could receive its telepathic broadcasts. "The other Shadow Maws," Sarah said urgently. Can you reach them? Zenthara's bioluminescent patterns shifted to deep blues and purples as it extended its consciousness across the galaxy. I can feel them, the creature said, its mental voice heavy with sorrow. So many still trapped, still suffering. But now that one of us is free, we can begin to heal them all. What happened next defied every law of physics Sarah thought she understood. Zenthara began creating what could only be described as quantum tunnels, passages through space-time that connected the research station to Vorthak facilities across the galaxy. Through these impossible portals, Zenthara extended its healing influence to other enslaved shadow maws. Sarah felt the moment when each tortured mind was touched by freedom, when the artificial chemical dependencies were neutralized by Zenthara's power. Dr. Chen, the creature's voice was filled with joy for the first time since she had met it. Watch what we can accomplish when we are ourselves. Across the galaxy, shadow maws began awakening from their chemical slavery. But instead of rampaging as their captors expected, they began doing what they had always done, protecting life. Sarah watched through Zenthara's consciousness as liberated shadow maws used their abilities to heal damaged ecosystems, to guide lost starships to safety, to shield worlds from cosmic radiation. In a matter of hours, the most feared predators in the galaxy revealed themselves to be its greatest guardians. The Crimson Plague, Sarah realized suddenly. You mentioned that this shadow maw might provide immunity. Zenthara's patterns brightened with what Sarah had learned to recognize as the creature's equivalent of a smile. Dr. Chen, we don't just carry immunity to the Crimson Plague. We were designed to cure it. The plague was a weapon the Vorthak used to control worlds, and we were created to counter it. The revelation was staggering. The bacterial infection that had been devastating the outer colonies wasn't a natural disaster. It was biological warfare, and the shadow maws had been engineered by some ancient civilization to be living antibodies against such weapons. Can you cure it? Sarah asked. We already are, Zenthara replied. My kindred across the galaxy are beginning the healing process now. Within days, every world touched by the plague will be cleansed. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she realized the full scope of what they had accomplished. By treating one dying creature with compassion instead of fear, she had not only saved an individual life, she had restored an entire species to their true purpose and ended a plague that had killed millions. Dr. Chen, Commander Zephyr's voice was filled with amazement. We're receiving reports from across the Federation. The Shadow Maw attacks have stopped everywhere, and they're healing people. Entire planets are being cured of the Crimson Plague. But Zenthara wasn't finished. Through their psychic connection, Sarah felt the creature reaching out to the Vorthak fleet still surrounding the station. Instead of destroying them, it began showing them memories of what their species could become if they abandoned their path of conquest and exploitation. We offer you redemption, Zenthara broadcast to the Vorthak commanders. Help us heal the damage that has been done, and you can be part of the galaxy's renewal instead of its corruption. Sarah watched in wonder as the Vorthak fleet powered down its weapons. The revelation of what they had truly done to the Shadow Maws, combined with Zenthara's offer of forgiveness, had broken their will to continue fighting. Dr. Chen, Zenthara said, its mental voice soft with gratitude. You saw past the monster they made me into and found the being I was meant to be. How can I ever repay such a gift? Sarah smiled, her hand still pressed against the chamber wall, maintaining their connection. Just be yourself. That's all any of us can do. As news of the Shadow Maw's true nature spread throughout the galaxy, Sarah realized that everything would be different now. The creatures that had been feared as destroyers were revealing themselves to be healers, protectors, and teachers. Their restoration would usher in a new age of cooperation and understanding between species. The Federation Council is requesting immediate communication, Commander Zephyr reported. They want to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Shadow Maws. And we will welcome such relations, Zenthara replied, its consciousness now touching every Shadow Maw across the galaxy. We have much to teach, and apparently much to learn about trust. Sarah looked around the chamber where everything had begun, where a dying creature had been brought back to life through simple compassion. The containment equipment that had once imprisoned Zenthara now stood silent, no longer needed. Dr. Chen, Zenthara said as the creature began to prepare for departure, you have given us back our purpose. We would be honored if you would accept the role of first human ambassador to our people. The offer was overwhelming, but Sarah realized it was exactly what she was meant to do. I accept, on one condition. Name it. I want to help heal the other Shadow Maws personally. Every creature deserves the same care and compassion, not just the miraculous recovery through psychic connection. Zenthara's bioluminescent patterns blazed with joy. Dr. Chen, you truly understand what it means to be a guardian of life. As Sarah prepared to leave the research station for a new life among the stars, she reflected on how a single act of compassion had changed everything. The galaxy's most feared monsters had been revealed as its greatest protectors. A plague that had killed millions was being cured, and an entire species had been restored to their true purpose. All because one human veterinarian had refused to see a patient as anything other than a living being that deserved help. The Shadow Maws were free, the galaxy was healing, and Sarah Chen had found her true calling among the stars. Sometimes the most incredible outcomes come from the simplest acts of kindness, and sometimes what everyone else calls foolhardy is exactly what the universe needs most.